खबरां दा लेखा जोखा अप्रैल 17 2025 ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਲਾਨਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਡੇ ਪਰੇਡ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਸ਼ਮੇਸ਼ ਦਰਬਾਰ ਸਮੂਹ ਸਾਧ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ 19 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ 2025 ਦਿਨ ਸੈਟਰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਸਰੀ ਵਿਖੇ ਵੱਡੀ ਸਾਲਾਨਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਪਰੇਡ ਆਯੋਜਿਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਹਮਾ ਕੇ ਪਹੁੰਚਣ ਦਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸੱਦਾ ਹੈ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਸਾਵਧਾਨ ਰਹਿਣ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਿਸ਼ ਹੈ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਜਸਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ 7788664966
Why have none of the major federal parties released their platforms? With the Canadian federal election just over a week and a half away, the clock is ticking for the parties to unveil their full coasted platforms. None of the major parties have released them yet, and one expert says voters can expect to wait even longer. Queensland Polytechnic University political scientist Shinder Puriwal says that most don't want to because it welcomes further scrutiny at a time when they are trying to win over voters. He says parties used to release their platforms at roughly the same time, but that's no longer the case. Now the parties release their platforms little by little and they do it region by region. So if something is affecting Quebec, for example, they will only release it in Quebec. Some of the bigger programs like childcare or pharmacare, they'll do it on a national scale, Pariwal explained. He also says the goal is to avoid criticism from journalists, organizations, the public, and of course opposing party leaders. He says that despite all this, he suspects the majority of the public already knows who they are voting for, and most won't flip through the documents once they are released. However, the downside is that voters don't know where parties stand on other big issues that don't include jobs, the economy, and the US-provoked trade war, the issues that have so far dominated the campaign trail. Puriwal says people require more information about healthcare, the environment, and $10 a day care. He suspects platforms will be unveiled by the end of advance voting days, which is Easter Monday, or by the weekend before Election Day, April 28. Overall, Puriwal thinks NDP leader Jagmeet Singh could lose his seat in Burnaby after being at the helm of dwindling support for the New Democratic Party. The NDP has a lot of strategic voters whose main purpose is to make sure Pierre Poilievre doesn't become Prime Minister. So they are not losing support, they are losing support to the Liberals, he explained. Various polls released over the last couple of weeks have shown the Liberals have pulled ahead of the Tories, but that gap has somewhat closed with voting day closing in. Federal Election Day is April 28. Make sure to go out and vote.
ਫੈਡਰਲ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਭਾਵੇਂ 28 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ ਆ ਪਰ ਹਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਨਤਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਖਿੱਤੇ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਔਰ ਥੋੜਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਵੱਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਬਹੁਤੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏ उसके पीछे कारण भी ये दसे जा रहे हैं कि अगर कोई भी गल क्वेबेक के सूबे नूं प्रभावित करती है तो प्लेटफॉर्म का वो हिस्सा उत्थे जनतक कर दिता जाता है और नाल दी नाल इस गल का भी खुलासा है कि अजकल खास तौर के उत्ते एडवांस पोलिंग के अखीरले दिन के उत्ते जिहड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म का नशर करन दी गल हो सकती है ਜਾਂ फिर इस वीकेंड के उत्ते जिहड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म नशर किया जा सकता है ਉਹਦਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਵੱਡਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦੇਰ ਨਾਲ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਦੇਰੀ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੋਟਰਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੁੱਝੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਿਸਟਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੁਰਾ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਔਰ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਝੁਕਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੋਟਰਸ ਦਾ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਵੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਬੇਸ਼ੱਕ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਮੋਹਰੀ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਅਤੇ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫਰਕ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਬੜੀ ਤੇਜ਼ੀ ਨਾਲ ਘਟ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ
Major BC ferries routes busy ahead of Easter long weekend. If you're heading from Metro Vancouver to southern Vancouver Island before the Easter long weekend, he is hoping you have a BC Ferries reservations. The first sailing from Tawasan to Swords Bay, available for those without a reservation, is well into the morning after the first 3 sailings of the day sold out. According to the BC Ferries website, there's not a lot of available space heading into the afternoon sailings either. Other routes to the island are also busy, with the first couple of sailings from Metro Vancouver to Nanaimo, including both Duke Point and Departure Bay, is full. Meanwhile, Vancouver International Airport looks to be operating as normal on Thursday morning after seeing major delays on Wednesday due to NAV Canada resource delays. Virtually all in- and outbound flights are listed as running on time by the airport. In a statement posted to social media Wednesday, NAV Canada Operations said it was moving aircraft safely and as quickly as possible.
ਇਸ ਲੌਂਗ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਫੈਰੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਸੂਚਨਾਵਾਂ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਫੈਰੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਐਡਵਾਂਸ ਰਿਜ਼ਰਵੇਸ਼ਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੰਬੇਰੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਫੈਰੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਰੂਟਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਫੁੱਲ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਈਸਟਰ ਲੌਂਗ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬਹੁਤੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮੰਗ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਜਿਹਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਗੈਰ ਹੀ ਚੱਲਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੁਨਾਸਿਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ। ਔਰ ਉਧਰ 에ਅਰਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਡਾਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਚੜ੍ਹਨ ਤੇ ਉਤਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੱਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵਿਘਨ ਸੀ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁੜ ਸਖਤਾ ਆ ਗਈ ਹੈ।
Canadians cancel US business trips amid tariff anger and border fear. First came the tariff threats, then the annexation taunts, but it wasn't until reports surfaced about foreigners being detained while trying to enter the US that Oscar Acosta decided to call off trips to 3 business conventions south of the border. That struck fear in my heart, said Acosta, who runs Ottawa-based startup body M3 Canex, which makes fitness tracking devices for extreme environments. The tech CEO was undeterred last month when he read about 35-year-old Canadian actress and entrepreneur Jasmine Monet, who was held in detention for 12 days after reapplying for a work visa at the American border in San Diego and then banned from the US for 5 years. Being an entrepreneur as well, being from a visible minority because my background is Hispanic, would I not run into a situation like the one that this lady ran into? Acosta is not alone. Across the country, Canadians are cancelling business trips, withdrawing from conferences and avoiding future bookings to the US as the backlash against President Donald Trump hits the world of corporate travel. At Flight Center Travel Group, Canada trips by air between the two countries declined by close to 40% year over year in February amid a surge of next plans, said Managing Director Chris Lyons. Business bookings have decreased 10%. We definitely had an immediate influx of cancellations for conferences that were meant to be in the US, he said, adding that scraped booking reached fever pitch 2 months ago. People had a lot of angst over travel down to the States because of the anger towards the US government. Companies that pulled the plug despite potential penalties or lost deposits spanned sectors ranging from banking and insurance to manufacturing. One of the banking customers he had cancelled 6 programs to the US, said Lyons destinations including New York, Dallas and Washington DC, and especially Las Vegas. Lyons' own travel agency has let employees know it understands if they are uncomfortable crossing the border to attend a company event in Los Angeles this summer. You can belong to a group that is being targeted. You may have a dual passport. You may be on a visa. There's a lot of people who don't want to travel because they just don't feel confident and safe in doing so, he said. Nor is the ripple effect short term. The cancellations extend as far as 2027. Experts say an upcoming corporate events without a set destination could wind up in Canada, Mexico, or farther afield rather than in America. While a broad wave of economic patriotism arose in response to tariffs, both threatened and real, as well as belittling jibes from Trump about Canada becoming the 51st state and referring to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as governor, businesses were among those poised to feel the pain of a trade war most actually. But the advanced reaction was not universal, causing rifts at some organizations conflicted on whether to proceed with corporate retreats and mixed feelings among employees. Some firms are going ahead with gatherings even as would-be attendees balk the prospect. A Royal LePage conference planned for Nashville 10 in September will go ahead because the dollars are already spent, Chief Executive Phil Soper told staff in an internal memo seen by the Canadian press. The message noted there had been uncertainty about the status of the gathering and that some agents might make the difficult decision not to attend. Financial commitments to secure the event were made long before the current political situation unfolded, and cancelling now would only hurt our own network, not Trump and not the U.S. economy, he said in the April 10th memo. The drop in corporate travel reflects a broader pullback from U.S. trips. Canadians' return visits by car fell 32% year over year last month, according to Statistics Canada. Plane trips home from the U.S. by Canadian residents declined 13.5%. Meanwhile, budget freezes and executive orders in the U.S. have helped dampen domestic travel there and sometimes into Canada. In late February, Trump targeted trips by federal employees, ordering government agencies to prohibit travel without written justification. Trips are also subject to new reporting requirements. They meant that attendees coming to conferences in Canada, particularly if they were government employees, they weren't able to come because they just didn't have the travel budget, said Minto Schneider, who chairs the Board of Meetings Business Canada, an advocacy group. However, corporate bookings have stabilized since March, said Leans, as companies continue to meet with clients. You're a salesperson, you're going down to solidify and relationship face-to-face with counterparts, all the more important amid economic uncertainty, he said. The decision to turn away from team building, skill development, or potential contracts does not always come easily. In Acosta's case, he had already reserved hotel rooms for an investor prospecting trip to Boston in May and a California aeronautics conference in July. He was also registered for an aerospace conference early next year in Orlando, Florida, where he was invited to moderate several discussions. I bought some new tires to be completely safe. I planned the route. I even had my dog's passport issued, he said, but I completely called them off. Now he's worried he may miss out on key opportunities to meet venture capitalists and raise funds, but he saw no other choice. Why I would put myself under any risk?
ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਵਾਰ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਐਂਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਨਰ ਨੇ ਆਖਰਕਾਰ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਅਗਲੀਆਂ 4 ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੀਟਿੰਗਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਉਸਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਂਸਲ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਸਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਐਂਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਨਰ ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਵਾਲੀ ਮੁੰਨੀ ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਸਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮੁਤਾਸਰ ਕੀਤਾ, ਮੈਂ ਛੇਤੀ ਕਿਤੇ ਛੱਡਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਸੰਭਵ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਡਰ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ 4 ਸ਼ਹਿਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਇਕੱਠ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਬਾਹਰ ਕੱਢ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਰ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਬੇਅੰਤ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਹਾਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਅਗਰ ਮੁਕਾਬਲਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 32% ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੜਕ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਕ੍ਰਾਸ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਔਰ 10% ਤੋਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 12% ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਵਾਈ ਯਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਕੈਂਸਲ ਕੀਤੇ ਨੇ। ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਫਰਮਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਕੱਠ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੱਦੇਨਜ਼ਰ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਂਸਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਔਰ ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ, ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਦਿੱਖ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟੇਟਸ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਦੁਸ਼ਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਆ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਨੇ ਕੈਂਸਲ ਲੋਕ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ।
BC government to remove second driver's test, introduce wait period for new licensing. The BC government is working to streamline its graduated driver licensing process by eliminating the requirement for a second road test and extending the restriction period for new drivers. On Wednesday, the province announced it is introducing legislation to remove the requirement to obtain a Class 5 license, a move intended to reduce long wait times for new drivers seeking their full license. Instead of those drivers eligible to move to a Class 5 license, government will be creating a new 12-month restriction period during which they must demonstrate safe driving behavior to progress, said the province in a press release. It says the changes will reduce the crash risk that comes with inexperience, remove requirements not proven to increase road safety, and decrease wait times for those seeking a road test to earn their novice license. Last week, the ICBC apologized to its customers, some of whom are seeing months-long wait times to book a driver's test. Currently, BC drivers must pass 2 road tests. First, they must pass a Class 7 test, at which point they enter the novice stage indicated by the magnetic and sticker on vehicles. The novice stage has 24 months but can be reduced with approved driver training. After that, drivers can take a Class 5 test to become fully licensed. Under the new regulations, the province says the Class 5 test requirement will be removed. Instead, new drivers will need to complete an additional 12-month stage and maintain a clean driving record before automatically earning their full license. Kyla Lee, a Vancouver-based lawyer with acumen law and driving law specialist, says the change is generally a positive step, but also a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's going to save government a lot of money not paying for a second road test for every single driver going through the graduated licensing program, but it is also going to be profitable. Drivers will be monitored and have the record assessed during the next 12 months period, which Lee says could lead to drivers facing harsher consequences during their earliest days of being behind the wheel. This means the province is going to collect more revenue on disputes of license prohibitions, they are going to collect more revenue on disputes of suspensions for alcohol or drugs, and they are going to collect more revenue on the reinstatement fees for their people's license, Lee explained. She is also dubious that the changes will result in safer roads. As soon as you put 2 years between somebody's initial road test and when they are given the go-ahead to be an unrestricted driver, you run into a situation where you're not maintaining the proper oversight over people as they're developing their driving skills in a way that could put the public at risk. ICBC says that their data shows that there is no improved road safety outcomes from the second road test. I'm skeptical of how that could possibly be measured given that the requirement is a second road test. Lee says it will take time to see the results of the changes. The province says implementation for the new rules is planned for early 2026. Lee adds that legal confusion may arise as the province transitions to a new set of the rules, with some applications still subject to the former rules.
BC सूबा सरकार है जिहड़ी खास तौर ते नवें ड्राइवर ते लाइसेंस की जिहड़ी प्रक्रिया दे विच 2 टैसट देने पैंदे ने, उन्हां दे विचों एक टैसट नूं मनफी करन दी जिहड़ी कारगुजारी दे विच रुझी हुई है, जिहड़ी कि 2026 तो लागू होण दी उम्मीद है, जिस दे विच कि पहला जिहड़ा टैसट आ वो दिता जाएगा और उस तो उपरंत हुण इस टाइम ते एन लगा के 24 महीनों बाद 2 साल बाद फिर तुहानूं जिहड़ा रेगुलर क्लास 5 का जिहड़ा लाइसेंस दिता जाता है। और हुण दे चेंज करने वाले जिहड़े कायदे कानून ने जिहड़े 2026 तो लागू होने ने, उस दे विच तुहानूं एक टैसट देना पेगा और उस तो उपरंत 12 महीने तुहाडी ड्राइविंग दी कारगुजारी है जिहड़ी उस दे उत्ते निर्भर करेगा कि तुहानूं क्लास 5 का लाइसेंस मिले या ना मिले। उस दे विच अगर तुसी किसी भी तरह की कोताही करदे हो, एक्सीडेंट हुंदा जां टिकट्स वगैरह मिलदियां ने, ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਲ ਵਾਲੀ 12 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਤੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਔਰ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਚਾਹੇ ਸੁੱਖ ਦਾ ਸਾਹ ਲਿਆ, ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਮਾਹਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ, ਉਧਰੋਂ ICBC ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਡਾਟੇ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਕੋਈ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਫਰਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਂਦਾ, ਪਰ ਆਲੋਚਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਤੇ ਸੂਬਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਟੈਸਟ ਲੈਣ ਦਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਏਗੀ, ਤੇ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਧਨ ਰਾਸ਼ੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੋਰ ਵਿਧੀ ਵਿਧਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਤਰਗਤ ਇਕੱਤਰਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਸੂਬਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ।
Surrey healthcare workers demand immigration justice. Healthcare workers will hold a rally in Surrey on Thursday to protest federal cuts to an immigration policy that threaten their path to permanent residency. On Tuesday, the BC government said the odds of new applications from immigrants looking to be accepted into its province nominee program (PNP) this year have dropped to near zero for anyone other than healthcare workers or entrepreneurs after the federal government slashed the number of available slots. A bulletin from the province says it was only allotted 4,000 nominations this year, about half of what it had last year and substantially less than the 11,000 it wanted. It says the program, which helps immigrants already living in Canada gain permanent residency if they fill key jobs, will accept 1,100 new applications this year, mainly for doctors, nurses, and other health professionals as well as entrepreneurs. Thursday's protest aims to pressure the government on restoring PNP spots for housekeepers, dietary aides, related security officers, and many more healthcare workers, people who rely on the immigration policy for a permanent, fair pathway to permanent residency. The hospital's employees union argues that BC cannot afford to lose these essential healthcare workers since the province is already struggling with the healthcare staffing shortages. The union also stresses that the people affected by the PNP cuts are essential healthcare workers with hard to fill jobs. BC's Minister of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills, Anne Kang, has addressed the concerns of the healthcare workers and said that the province remains committed to advocating for the federal government to restore the BC PNP's nomination allocation to previous levels so that BC can continue to attract and retain the professionals it needs most. Our primary focus is to process the majority of the current application inventory while accepting approximately 1,100 new applications. These will mainly be targeted at roles contributing directly to the delivery of healthcare services, including doctors and nurses, said Kang. HEU which has more than 60,000 members in the province, says the protest will be held at King George Boulevard and will not disrupt hospital operations. And it's scheduled for 11 a.m. on Thursday.
ਅੱਜ ਕਿੰਗ ਜੋਰਜ ਤੇ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆ ਉੱਥੇ ਵਿਖਾਵਾ ਕਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜੀ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਮੰਗਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਿਖਾਵਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਔਰ ਕਾਰਨ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਪੂਰਤੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਰਨੀ ਤਾਂ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਪਰ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਦਾ PNP ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਸਰ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੁਜ਼ਾਹਰਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਹੈ ਵੱਡੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਸੂਬੇ ਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ ਕੋਈ 11,000 ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਵਰਕਰ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿਰਫ 4,000 ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਦੇ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੇ ਨੇ
Federal election 2025 key races to watch across Canada. It is expected to be a tight race between the Liberal Party of Canada and Conservative Party of Canada coming election day on April 28th. Since former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau resigned and current Liberal leader Mark Carney took over, the Liberals have seen a stunning reverse of fortune. Just 4 months ago, the party seemed headed for political annihilation as the Conservatives enjoyed a 2-1 advantage in support across various polls. Now, most polls have the Liberals pulling ahead slightly over Pierre Poilievre and the CPC. That means their races across the country will be more crucial than ever for victory. Some of the key ridings to watch across Canada: BC Abbotsford South Langley. Retiring Conservative MP Ed Fast made headlines this month when he endorsed an independent candidate for the new riding of Abbotsford South Langley. Mike de Jong, a former provincial member of the Legislative Assembly, got a nod from the Fast despite being dropped by the federal Conservatives in late March with no explanation. He'll be facing Kevin Gillis for the Liberals and businessman and community advocate Sukhman Singhal from the Conservatives. Burnaby Central NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is hoping to hold onto a seat in the House of Commons with a new riding of Burnaby Central, but early polls indicate the leader could be at risk of losing his seat to the Liberals. Lawyer Wade Chang is running for the Liberal Party against Singh and businessman James Yan for the Conservatives. North Island Powell River, the riding which geographically covers half of Vancouver Island and much of the province's coast, became the subject of some controversy when Conservative candidate Aaron Gunn's hateful statements about Indigenous people and the country's history of residential schools came to light. Despite several prominent groups repeatedly protesting Gunn's candidacy, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has continued to back Gunn and polls identify him as a frontrunner in the riding. Saanich Gulf Islands Green Party co-leader Elizabeth May's long-held seat in the riding is in contention, with polls predicting a toss-up between May and Conservative candidate Kathy Onstad. Vancouver Kingsway, the East Vancouver riding, not to be confused with Vancouver East, has been an NDP stronghold since 2008. Incumbent Don Davis is fighting a wave of declining national enthusiasm for the New Democrats, with support gathering under Liberal candidate Amy Gill. Alberta Edmonton Southeast Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi is hoping to make the jump to federal politics, taking a leave of absence to run for the Liberals in the newly created riding of Edmonton Southeast. He'll be going up against Conservative candidate Jag Sharan Singh Mahal, a lawyer and community leader, and the NDP's Harpreet Grewal, a nurse and a community leader. Edmonton Centre, the Liberals are trying to hold on to one of their few seats in Alberta with a new candidate this time after Randy Bosnold elected not to run again. Bosnold's time in office has been tumultuous over the last year. He resigned from cabinet last November amid controversy over his business dealings with skepticism about his claims of Indigenous identity. Army veteran Eleanor Olszewski is running for the Liberals. Economist Syed Ahmed will be on the ballot for the Conservatives, and the NDP are running former broadcaster and school board trustee Trisha Easterbrook. Edmonton Griasbach, the NDP's Blake Desjardins won this traditional Conservative North Edmonton riding in the last election, beating out CPC incumbent Kerry Dewitt. Initial polling is showing another tight race between the CPC and NDP, and both candidates are running again. Edmonton Gateway. Edmonton Gateway is another riding created by the redrawn boundaries. The Liberals have had a revolving door of candidates in this race, with former Alberta NDP Rod Loyola being kicked out and replaced with lawyer Jeremy Hofslut. Loyola is now running as an independent. They both will be facing off against longtime CPC politician Tim Opal. He was the MP for Edmonton Millswood, which was partly absorbed in Edmonton Gateway. Calgary Confederation. The Conservatives have held the Calgary Confederation riding since it was created in 2015. But Len Weber, who was the MP for the riding, will not be running in the 2025 election. Jeremy Nixon is in the running to continue Weber's legacy, while the Liberals named Corey Hogan, VP of the University of Calgary, as their candidate. Early polls indicated the riding is a toss-up between the Conservatives and Liberals. Calgary Centre. The Conservatives flipped Calgary Centre with a 20,000 vote victory in 2019, and it has remained blue. But the Liberals have regained some ground in the region, and it could be at a risk of another flip. Incumbent Greg McLean is running for the CPC, facing off against local businesswoman Lindsay Lurnau for the Liberals. Calgary Skyview. This Liberal-held riding will have a new MP after this election due to the current MP Joe Chahal running in the newly created Calgary McKnight riding. Hafiz Malik will hope to continue the Liberal run here, but will be facing off against Amarpreet Gill. Polling indicates the Liberals have a slight lead over the CPC. Prairies. Churchill Kiwetinook-Aski, another NDP stronghold that is now a toss-up in the polls in Churchill. Kiwetinook-Aski NDP incumbent Nikki Ashton had a comfortable 18-point victory over the Liberal candidate in 2021. Ashton's foreign travel during COVID caused controversy and led to her losing the shadow cabinet critic roles. Allenwood Transcona. NDP incumbent Leela Dance is neck and neck to the polls with Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds. She narrowly won with about 4 points margin in the September 2024 by-election compared to the NDP's 22-point victory in 2021. Since 1988, the NDP has won this riding in every election except 2011. Winnipeg West. Conservatives candidate Marty Morans won narrowly by 24 votes in 2021. In 2025, Morans is hoping to keep this seat against Liberal candidate Doug Eolsflun, who is drawing support from NDP voters. Winnipeg Centre, NDP incumbent Leah Gazan is at risk of losing her seat despite an easy victory in 2021 when she beat the Liberal candidate by 21 points. Gazan is now neck and neck with the Liberal candidate community advocate Rahul Walia. Ontario, Carlton. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre's riding will likely be a safe win for the incumbent, but it could be a while before the country hears the results as he is facing a whopping 90 candidates. The reason for the uncommon length of candidates has to do with a group of advocating for electoral reform called the Longest Ballot Committee. Previous elections in which they have flooded the ballot have taken hours to count the votes. Gulp. The riding is without an incumbent after long-time Liberal Lloyd Longfield said he was not running. Anna Esselman, a professor of political science at the University of Waterloo, notes it has been a stronghold for the Liberals since Jean Chrétien won in 1993. However, to the Gulp being held provincially by the Greens, Esselman notes it could be interesting to see if voters switch. Kitchener-Conestoga. After narrowing missing the win in 2019 and 2021, the Conservatives are eyeing the riding of Kitchener-Conestoga. Liberal incumbent Tim Lewis won it from the Tories, who held it for over a dozen years prior to the 2019. Lewis will be facing entrepreneur Doug Trelleborn for the Conservatives. Nepean. Liberal leader Mark Carney will be trying to win his first election in the Ottawa area riding. Liberal Chandra Arya had held the seat since 2015 and was planning to run again until the Liberal Party revoked his nomination but did not give a reason why. Polls show the Liberal stronghold will likely stay red in the upcoming election. Peterborough. With newly drawn boundaries, the Conservative-held riding of Peterborough is at the risk of flipping to the Liberals. Incumbent Michelle Ferrari will be facing off against Emma Harrison for the Liberals, a farmer and a small business owner in the area, and Heather Ray, who is also a farmer for the NDP. Toronto St. Paul's. The riding was also considered a Liberal stronghold until shocking by-election results flipped the seat to the Conservatives by just 600 votes. The June 2024 by-election was seen as a test for former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau amid dropping poll numbers for the Liberals. Incumbent Don Stewart, financial and marketing specialist, is hoping to hold onto his seat as he faces former MP Leslie Church, who also served as Chief of Staff to former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland once again. Polling indicates the riding will flip back to red in the 2025 election. Windsor West, the border-adjacent riding, has been an NDP stronghold for the last 2 decades, but with the rising tensions between the U.S., could the residents want to change? Polling has indicated the riding is a toss-up between the NDP and the Liberals. Incumbent Brian Massey will be facing off against lawyer and community leader Richard Pollock. Quebec. La Pointe de Ile. One of the Montreal's ridings held by the Bloc Québécois is likely to be tight race between the 3-time Bloc MP Mario Beaulieu and Liberal candidate Vivian Minko. The Liberals have never won here since the riding was created in 2004. The Green Party candidate is Oliver Huard, who was arrested for scaling the Jacques Cartier Bridge in October 2024. He is balancing court dates with his election campaign. La Salle Emad Verdun. The second Montreal riding belonging to the Bloc Québécois candidate Louis Philippe Sauve edged out a victory in what was considered Liberal stronghold in September of 2024. It was a tight three-way battle between the Bloc, the Liberals, and the NDP, and the loss has been a big setback for then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But with the Liberals polling well across the board, could the Bloc be looking at a complete wipeout in the Montreal area? Mount Royal. Mount Royal has also been a Liberal stronghold, with incumbent Anthony Housefather seeking a fourth term. Conservatives are countering with lawyer Neil Oberman. The riding has voted Liberals for 85 years, and Housefather was among the Liberal MPs saying Justin Trudeau should step aside. He endorsed Chrystia Freeland during the Liberal leadership race, but defended Mark Carney after he slipped up mistakenly, said he agreed with Hamas during the French leadership debate. Rosemont La Petite Patrie. This riding is currently the only NDP seat in Quebec held by incumbent Alexandra Bollares, who is quite popular. Will the area buck the national trend shifting towards the Liberals, or will the NDP hold on? Chateauguay Les Jardins de Naperville. Bloc's candidate Patrick O'Hara lost by 12 votes in the 2021 election before the riding was redistributed. O'Hara is back this time around, but the opposition is different. Polytechnic survivor and gun control activist Natalie Provost is looking to keep the Liberal riding red. Early in the campaign, Mark Carney mispronounced Provost's name and got the location of the Polytechnic massacre wrong. He later apologized. Beloil Cambly. Bloc leader Yves Francois Blanquet is likely to hold onto the seat in Beloil, but could the Liberals and Conservatives gain ground in the usual Bloc stronghold amid economic concerns and a recent surge of Canadian patriotism among Quebecers? Bredia Masquionge. This riding is considered a possible second seat for the NDP in Quebec. Former NDP MP Ruth Ellen Busnell, forever known as Vegas Girl in the province, got elected during the 2011 Orange Wave despite taking a trip to Las Vegas during that year's campaign. She held into the seat in 2015 but lost the next two elections to the Bloc Yves Perrin. It's expected to be a close contest between the NDP, Liberals and Bloc. Academic and entrepreneur Stephanie Bilodeau is running for the Liberals. Atlantic Halifax. The New Democratic Party will have a likable and strong candidate in Lisa Roberts, who is well known in the community after winning a seat in the provincial government in 2016. Although polls still show her a distant second to the Liberal candidate Shannon Midyama. Former Liberal MP Andy Fillmore held the seat until 2024, since taking it from the NDP in 2015, but he resigned to run for mayor of Halifax. South Shore St. Margaret's. Conservative incumbent Rick Perkins defeated the incumbent Liberal candidate in this riding in 2021. Based on current polling numbers, the Liberals are just a few points behind Perkins, with candidate Jessica Fancy Landry. Acadie Annapolis. Polls are showing an extremely tight race between the Liberals and Conservatives in the riding. The incumbent Chris D. Antremont has held the riding since 2019, but is facing a Liberal candidate who made the jump from provincial to federal politics for this election.
ਚੋਣਾਂ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ 28 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ ਆ, ਪਰ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਅਤੇ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫਸਵਾਂ ਮੁਕਾਬਲਾ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਇਸ ਫਸਵੇਂ ਮੁਕਾਬਲੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰੀ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਆ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਥਾਨਕ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਲੋਅਰ ਮੇਨਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਸਾਊਥ ਵਾਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਹੋਇਆ, ਬਰਨਵੀ ਵਾਲੀ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਕਿ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੀਟ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਜਾਣ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖਦਸ਼ਾ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਜਤਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ। ਔਰ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਫਲਿੱਪ ਹੋ ਜਾਣ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਿਟੇਲਡ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਪੂਰੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਭਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸੀਟਾਂ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਿਸਥਾਰਪੂਰਵਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਬਦਲੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੀਟ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਬਦਲਾਵ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੀਟਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਹੁਣ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਲੂਜ਼ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। याद रहे जी रेस है दोवां पार्टीज दे विच फसवी है और चोणां दी डेट है जी वो 28 अप्रैल है।
Party leaders face off in English for second federal leaders debate. The leaders of Canada's four main political parties will square off for a second and final leaders debate tonight in Montreal after an initial French language face-off on Wednesday. Liberal leader Mark Carney, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, and the Bloc Québécois Yves Francois Blanchette will meet on stage for a final time before the April 28th vote. After first debate that they saw them spur on the pipelines, the economy, and U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. Carney is leading in the polls and was a frequent target of attacks from his rivals on Wednesday. Poilievre accused Carney throughout the evening of being just like his Liberal predecessor Justin Trudeau and promised to reverse Liberal economic policies, he said, and halted resource development and weakened the country. Carney noted several times that he's only been Prime Minister for a month and said that in that time he'd already reached an agreement with Canada's premiers to work on developing a national energy corridor and removing trade barriers. The leaders were challenged by moderator Patrice Roy on why they haven't yet presented costed platforms and were asked how they would pay for tax cuts and other spending promises. The English language debate will be moderated by Tuvol Steve Palkin and will be focused on the themes of affordability, energy and climate, leading in a crisis, public safety and security, and tariffs and threats to Canada. Political strategists said Carney would remain a target during Thursday's debate after he emerged mostly unscathed from the Wednesday's event. The pressure is the square of Pierre Poilievre because if he doesn't have a knock or punch in the English debate, I don't know what he's left with, said Jonathan Callas, a consultant at Macmillan Vantage and former Quebec advisor to former Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The first debate took place without the Green Party's Jonathan Pednall after the Leaders Debate Commission announced early Wednesday that it had rescinded the party's invitation to participate in the two debates.
ਅੱਜ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਨੇ ਚਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਅੱਜ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਆ ਉਹ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈ। ਕੱਲ ਦੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਫ੍ਰੈਂਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹੀ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਮਾਰਕ ਕਾਰਨੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੱਡੇਰੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਟਾਰਗੇਟ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਲੀਡਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਰ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੇਰੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਸਾਬਕਾ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਦਮ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਚੱਲਣ ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਰ-ਵਾਰ ਦੁਹਰਾਈ, ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਕਾਰਨੀ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੱਖ ਜਤਾਉਂਦੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਬਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਮਹੀਨਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਪਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਪੁਖਤਾ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਹੈ ਅੱਜ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਔਰ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ 28 अप्रैल ਨੂੰ ਹਨ।
इसी के साथ हमें दीजिएगा इजाजत। खबरों दा लेखा जोखा प्रोग्राम के इस सेगमेंट से जिसे आप तक पहुंचा रहे थे गुरुद्वारा साहब दाशमेश दरबार खालसा डे परेड 19 अप्रैल दिस सैटरडे। पार्टिसिपेट कीजिए इस परेड में, नगर कीर्तन में, लेकिन हाँ याद रखिए पब्लिक सेफ्टी का ध्यान रखिए और कोई ज़्यादा जानकारी चाहिए तो जसवीर सिंह को कॉल कर सकते हो आप 7788624966।